How often do you think about the Oscars? About how many Oscar winning films there are and how many you've seen? Yeah, there's a few famous Oscar winning films that we've all seen, The Godfather and Lord of the Rings and Titanic, I'm King of the World, all that stuff. But the Oscars have been running since 1927. There are currently over 1,000 films, feature length films, which have won an Oscar. How many have you seen? I did the numbers for myself. It's not many, and I consider myself quite a movie buff. So here then is the premise of this podcast. Every episode, I and a rotating cast of two guests will randomly select one of the 1,000 films that have won an Oscar, watch it, and talk about it, with the only requirement being that one of the three people on each episode has to have never seen the movie before we talk about it. That will get difficult with Star Wars. Please note that our coverage of a movie does not constitute an endorsement of it. My least favorite movie of 2016, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, won an Oscar for Best Makeup, while my favorite movie of 2016, The Handmaiden, wasn't even nominated for anything. Please also note that our coverage of a movie is not a blanket endorsement of any or all of the people involved in it. A lot of terrible people have won Oscars. Kevin Spacey won an Oscar 20 years before he was outed as an abuser, and Roman Polanski won one 20 years after. But every film, good, bad, or in many cases mediocre, that has won an Oscar is an important part of film history just for being there. And they all, on some level, deserve a tiny bit of consideration, even if that consideration ends up concluding that it's garbage. And with all of that in mind, I am your host, as always, Ellie McConaughey, and with me today is Sam Marchiony.
I broke the streak of racist movies, but at what fucking cost?
The Matrix was not about racism. And Justin Frankly.
Yeah, actually, I clicked on the Zoom link. Is this British literature 18 to present?
And we are finishing out my month of getting to choose the results with the movie that I hate, the 2022 Darren Aronofsky film The Whale, which won Best Actor and Best Makeup and Hairstyling at the 95th Academy Awards. Oh, Brendan. What did you do to me?
Brendan, you will forever be my love for the mummy, but baby boy, honey, no.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like a way to describe this movie, because like this is recent enough that I probably don't need to do a plot summary, but like I feel like I should. I guess if you can imagine Requiem for a Dream crossed with My 600-Pound Life, you're 90% of the way there.
Also a sprinkling of we need to talk about Kevin.
Also a sprinkling of we need to talk about Kevin. Good Lord, his daughter is awful. It made watching this movie deeply disconcerting for me.
I wish that this movie had been about Hong Chau's character. Listeners, if you go back to listen to my podcast episode on The Menu, Matt Madrano and I talked about how we were pretty sure Hong Chau's Oscar nomination for this movie was actually also an apology Oscar for nomination for not nominating her in The Menu. And I want to semi-retract that because Hong Chau's one of the more compelling and watchable characters in this movie, to the point where I kind of wish this movie was just about a woman trying to keep her life together after her brother's death.
So one of the things that sort of interests me, and that's actually a really interesting point, because you could make this movie be about Ellie, who of the three characters I could be named after, Ellie Sattler, Ellie The Last of Us, and this Ellie, easily the worst. And Ellie Last of Us murders multiple people for basically no reason at one point in one of those games. And you could make it about Hong Chau's character, Liz. You could even make it about the Mormon missionary. But the original product for this thing is a stage play, and it feels like a stage play.
It shows so much.
It's so fascinating to watch this incredibly grimy, realistic, set dressing and these very close, intimate shots on just this incredibly stagey, blocking and line delivery. The exposition in this movie is so clunky. And I like stage plays. A stage play is not a bad word for me, but man.
I've always had I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. I don't mind when films feel like theater.
Okay.
Necessarily. Like, yeah, I did a lot of backstage work. I'm used to like how theater looks like, and so it doesn't really occur to me that it feels wrong, like cinematic language wise, to have a movie that looks like a theater. Like one of my favorite films is The Man from Earth, and that film is sort of like this film where it takes it like entirely within a cabin, and it's a conversation between like seven people.
I like The Man from Earth quite a lot too.
Yes.
And I obviously, as I'm sure Sam will tell you, it's been 3 years now, and I still haven't shut the fuck up about We're All Going to the World's Fair, a movie with two actors who never appear on screen together. But what I mean when I say that it feels stagey, there is a way that a movie can feel stagey and still feel good. We talked about Miracle on 34th Street not 1 month ago, and that movie's it's from the 50s, it's from the 40s, it's a little stagey, it's a little stiff in the way that movies from the 40s often were. I don't know, like something about this feels it's like it's trying to draw you in with the close-up camera work and the music, but then like the really really blunt stagey blocking just keeps me at an arm's length, and it's weird. It's a weird effect. It's a weird fucking effect.
To compare this to Chicago, which is an absolutely fucking phenomenal stage play to movie adaptation,
We'll get to it.
that's a movie that one grasps that the language of cinema is different from the language of stage, but also gets creative with how to do the exposition, like by tying it into the newsreels and stuff. People also do that a lot in Shakespeare movies. They'll give messenger things to newscasters. They'll find ways to make it more interesting than what is essentially park and bark monologues.
Mm-hmm. This movie has a lot of very very long monologues. Honestly, this is like the third time I've seen it. Every time I completely forget that the missionary gets this really long monologue in the back half, because it barely matters. The missionary is such a weird character. I don't.
Am I gonna piss you off, Ellie, if I tell you that that scene kind of reminded me of Bound, but mostly in a I could be watching Bound right now way?
I mean, so Bound is a really good counterexample because except for like maybe two scenes, except for like one or two, except for one scene, everything in the movie takes place in this apartment building, and even in that apartment building, all but like a handful of moments, especially once we get to the third act, take place in just one apartment, just these rooms, and you get really intimately familiar. But Bound is a thriller, so like it has to use that space really effectively. As I like to tell people, like there is a moment in that movie where they use which one of these two characters can socially maneuver behind the bar first as like a whole tension beat. Whereas this is a melodrama, and I don't think I'm being mean when I say that. It is openly a melodrama. I don't know. I don't like it, y'all. I was kind of hoping, given that I announced that I hated it going in, that even once we got outside of the way it treats its main character, I would find something more to like about it. I don't. I still have all the same opinions I had the last time I saw it.
Yeah, I didn't like write out my hatred in a haiku the way Ellie did. God, that was so fucking stupid. But let me give you a full. Let me go through like just 7 lines of my notes because I didn't take a lot of notes.
Mm-hmm.
This is a damn play and it feels like it. No, it is not a good essay. Motherfucker, is this 2016? This essay is so fucking wrong. I hate that fat suit. I hate this. The fat shaming is so unsubtle. Your daughter is a bitch, my dude. Deal with it.
So Justin said something really interesting in the Discord chat when we all just watched the movie and we were just chatting about it, which is that this is an addiction story that Darren Aronofsky loves to do, like Requiem for a Dream. I referenced Requiem for a Dream. Justin's referenced it in the Discord chat. And I want to let you expound on that, but I mentioned in return, I really hate Requiem for a Dream. Once you strip out the fancy editing and camera work, it is morally and emotionally a 1950s anti-drug PSA.
Haven't seen it, won't seen it until Jared Leto fucking dies.
Fair.
It's been a very long time since I've seen Requiem. But yeah, it's like similar to this, similar to Requiem, this film is actually a lot of interplays between different kinds of addiction. So in Requiem, it's like, oh, like obviously the drug addiction, or like I think one of them is alcoholic, or maybe I'm thinking of the wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
And then this film, it's, Charlie is a food addict. He is somewhat bulimic, and you sort of see how he's constructed this life for himself. So obviously, Liz is his caretaker because she was his former partner's brother, and so she has this emotional need to look after Charlie, but Charlie keeps making terrible choices in his life, and even though people try to tell him no, he keeps doing it anyway because he's an addict.
You're right, and it's interesting. Addiction is a major theme of the movie, but so is like self-flagellation, and we're getting into a point that is always just like stuck in my craw about this movie, which is okay. Your logic train is that Charlie is eating himself to death as a form of self-flagellation for leaving his family to be with his boyfriend and then failing to stop his boyfriend from killing himself, right? That's where we're at. We're all in agreement on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be 600 pounds for that to work. He could be a normal sized fat guy for that to work. He could be a skinny guy who is binging and purging, and that would work just as well. He is 600 pounds because the movie wants it. This is a play wants him to be 600 pounds.
This was another point I made in my notes, that you could make this story about a guy who was HIV positive and lose almost nothing that way. I can't believe I'm basically suggesting this should be more like Rent, but like... And I'm not saying... You can still be fat and have HIV. Because, newsflash, the world is pretty fucking fat-phobic even if you are not morbidly obese.
It's so fascinating because like there's a recurring beat where Liz wants him to go to the hospital because his blood pressure is, what was it, like 238 over 134 or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
And like all you need to counteract a lot of this is have someone bring up, hey man, going to the hospital when you're overweight fucking sucks. And there's obviously like the physical requirements like for someone of that size, as there's a beat in, I think it's Scrubs, where they need to give an MRI to a guy who's 600 pounds and they have to take him to the zoo because they have the MRI machine that's big enough, and that's humiliating. But like the way doctors treat overweight people is shit. It's garbage. And no one ever brings that up.
Hollywood even treated Brendan Fraser like shit when he went through a massive weight gain after a ton of bad shit happened to him.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what originally attracted him to the role. I don't know if he's ever said it. I didn't read a lot of interviews about this. Honestly, they didn't give a lot of interviews about this movie in general. It's kind of like its for your consideration campaign and its place as an Oscar winner are so interesting to me because like I don't think anyone really liked this movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, honestly, like, I get why he was running supporting actor, and I would not trade him for anything in the world, but I feel a little bit like Ke Huy Quan should have been in the lead actor conversation. Because I'm looking at the other stuff. The only other person that I really heard a lot about for this year's Best Actor race was Austin Butler for the Elvis biopic. But that's just because everybody was talking about him doing the goddamn voice.
I was really rooting for Best Act this year. I was really rooting for Colin Farrell. The Banshees of Inisherin, I believe, walked away without anything that year, which is a damn shame because that movie is excellent. Very small, very tragically cruel film, but with a lot of complexity to it. But that's what I mean. Like, I don't feel like Brendan Fraser. I don't feel like anyone's under the illusion that Brendan Fraser won this for the performance. Although he is trying. All of the actors, but especially Brendan Fraser and Hong Chow, are trying their absolute damnedest here. I don't know if they get there.
I will say one benefit is by virtue of it winning Best Actor and Best Makeup and Hairstyling is that we found another way to guarantee Baz Luhrmann never gets an Oscar. And, what else can we ask for?
That's true.
I mean, Baz Luhrmann movies do get Oscars. They just generally get them for his wife. And this is your reminder, Baz Luhrmann is straight and married to a woman. Or he's at least attracted to women. Probably some bisexuality in there. Let's be real.
That feels so wrong. Every time I'm reminded of that, I'm like, are you sure? Are we sure?
They've been together for years. They have children, I believe.
That doesn't mean anything. Ethan Cohen's wife has kids with him, and she's a lesbian. Is it Joel or Ethan? Whichever one's not married to Frances McDormand.
Oh, yeah, I also feel bad for this year because for some inexplicable reason, they felt that this is the year that they needed to give the Lifetime Achievement Award to Jamie Lee Curtis, but I don't know why out of all the people who were nominated, like anyone other than her was the person who should have won.
I love Jamie Lee Curtis. I would have given it to her over Hong Chow because again I didn't like this movie much, but like Carrie Condon is incredible.
Stephanie Hsu.
Yeah.
Stephanie Hsu.
Stephanie Hsu. I'd even give it to Angela Bassett if you're going to do the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Okay, but let's talk about the makeup and hairstyling thing because
must we?
It shocks me that this year Everything Everywhere was not even nominated in makeup and hairstyling. Like, the most out there that makeup and hairstyling is in this category is Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which looked incredible and probably should have been what won, but that fucking fat suit.
That fucking fat suit. I mean, I could see the Batman getting it, but it would also be winning for a fat suit, frankly.
Wouldn't Elvis have won for a fat suit too? Didn't they pad up Tom Hanks?
They did pad up Tom Hanks, but there's other stuff. They had to make Austin Butler look like utterly like shit.
God.
I was just going to say that Angela Bassett should have won not only for a Lifetime Achievement Award, but for also being the only actor nominated whose words are in a Fatboy Slim song.
Honestly, I didn't mind the fat suit. Having seen a lot of fat suits in my life, in the massive gradient of fat suits, like this isn't Norbit, right? This isn't Nutty Professor. This isn't, there are fat suits that are like actually insulting, whereas this one, they're trying to bring it more towards trying to think of the wording. It looks like what that looks like.
It looks realistic. I'll give it. It is an impressive achievement of makeup and prosthetics with the little asterisk there, in the same way that like making all of those famous actors look the way they do in, oh god, what is the film from the 90s? It has Madonna in it. It's a comic book movie.
Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy, that's it. Thank you. My brain was just absolutely not finding that word. Dick Tracy, like it is honestly, it is impressive in the same way that those effects are impressive. It's a visual. It looks like it's physically part of him. It doesn't look unrealistic, but it is designed to make him grotesque.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel guilty saying that. The camera treats him as grotesque.
I will be our Hi Kyle. It reminds me of Kyle's video about freaks and Honey Boo Boo and the perverse spectacle of seeing.
Mm-hmm. It is that. It is very much that. And I feel like, again, like to give the makeup artist their due, this is a very impressive job. It does not look, it looks like it's realistic. It looks like it's there, but it feels, I don't know. I've said on a couple of occasions that my summary of this film, my opinion on this film, is that it is a stunning mismatch of director and material. Like, I don't think Darren Aronofsky is the director to tell this story, but also I think the material is not very good from first principles.
As in, like, the way that it approaches the topic of like food addiction or like this sort of person's spiraling into self-destruction is like incongruous where with
Mm-hmm.
the film tries, or like the film and script try to be overly sentimental,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact remains that the film is like harrowing.
Yep.
Would be one word. I have never seen a film as accurately capture what this sort of food addiction is and the sort of lifestyle that a person with that level of food addiction has, and the environment that would lead to a person doing that to themselves.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way. Yeah, it's a very the script on a script level. It's extremely sentimental. It has very how do I put this in a way that makes sense? It has a lot of moments that are clearly intended to be heartwarming or uplifting. You know, at the very end of the movie, he's standing up, which he couldn't do before.
God, fucking inspiration porn bullshit.
Right, exactly. And then like Darren Aronofsky is shooting it like a horror film, or like a drug. He's shooting it like a drug addiction movie. Like they have and I'm cripping a little bit from another YouTuber friend of the show, Video Kind, where like he pulls open the drawer and there's the good drawer full of like healthy snacks, and then there's the bad drawer full of candy. I'm just like, shut the fuck up, Darren. Ugh, Darren, Darren, why?
I mean, it's not dissimilar to like the whole Black Swan thing. To trot out our favorite tired meme. If I had a nickel for every time somebody won a lead performance Oscar in a Darren Aronofsky movie playing somebody in the arts with an obsessive, destructive fascination with this weird concept, and also they had eating disorders, I'd have 2 nickels.
Isn't a lot. It's weird that it happened twice. Black Swan's an interesting comparison point, and I like Black Swan. I still like Black Swan.
I like Black Swan a lot too. Oh, and they're both queer. I forgot to mention they're both queer.
We will. You know what? It's some, remind me. We're putting a pin in that. I want to talk about how Darren Aronofsky employs queerness at some point.
Yeah, but the point is, Nina has her obsession with perfection. Charlie has his obsession with honesty,
Mm-hmm.
which is just like in concept. Yeah, I think Ellie more than anybody in this podcast would be like, yeah, living as your honest self is really fucking important.
Mm-hmm.
But like his concepts of honesty are so fucking weird.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I thought was interesting about his dynamic over time. Like, yeah, at several points in the film, you have him sort of, he is projecting his what he wants to believe is true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he feels the need to believe in this honesty because in a lot of ways it would be validating to how he speaks to himself. You know, near the end of the film when he is like talking with the evangelical person for the last time, he's sort of like forcing it out of the guy, just kind of like, you know, I don't want my dead partner to see me like this, because ultimately this person hates themselves and they keep self-harming because they dislike who they are, and they've sort of become to accept the fact that by the virtue of them choosing to self-harm in this way, to self-destruct this way, they're trying to destroy themselves. They're just taking the long way because they, you know, can't physically leave their house to throw themselves off a bridge, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, in this way, like, you know, you said before, like, how awful his daughter is to him and all the terrible things she says to him. And in a lot of ways, there's not anything that she could say to him that he wouldn't say to himself constantly.
Yeah.
It's just that he has this, like, impetuous positivity that he's trying to delude himself into accepting because it's the only way that he knows how to process anything beyond, you know, eating his feelings, you know, trying to fill the void in his soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that honesty, it's, you know, again, it's like he feels the need for people to be honest because beyond how he thinks of himself and how what he has done with his life and the mistakes that he's made and the regrets that he has, he wants to believe that he made them for the right reasons and because he was trying to achieve his true self. Like he left his wife for his former student because he did love his former student, and they loved each other. This was the correct choice for him. He just did it in an awfully stupid way.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting to me how Charlie's most common recurring comment is "I'm sorry," just in response to whatever anyone else says to him. Because on the one hand, that is something that I feel like depressed people do, but it's also, speaking from experience here, sort of a symptom of internalized abuse. You are making it your own fault from the beginning so that you have control over your abuse. It is your fault, so therefore you deserve it. So therefore the world makes sense. You did something bad and you are being punished for it. That's not a healthy outlook, but it is a very common outlook. It's one that I had to work my way through myself. And like that's again, like, this is some there's sort of like something interesting on the hook there, that like everybody including Liz kind of treats this guy like shit. Everyone makes fun of his weight, everyone talks down to him, and like that is interesting. And the fat suit is very impressive, and we're there to see the fat suit, but in order to make those two things work in conjunction, to compare it to another movie with a very impressive lead performance and a very impressive use of makeup and prosthetics to create that lead performer, you need the moment where the audience's voyeurism is interrogated. You need the moment where John Hurt yells at both the audience and the characters in the room, "I am not an animal, I am a human." And that moment never comes in here. Never at any point do they ever interrogate everyone's voyeurism or treatment of this character. I don't know. It kind of feels like they agree that he deserves it.
Yeah, but it's very clear that they think he deserves it for being fat, not for being gay.
Well, yeah, they don't interrogate it because from his perspective, he does deserve it, because a lot of the film is sort of framed from his perspective of it being his fault, or like, within his addiction, obviously exacerbated by his depression anyway. But the fact that he does believe these things about himself, and he feels that he does deserve this abuse. That's again part of the reason why he wants to believe in this honesty idea, that, oh, well, they're just doing this to me because I deserve it, and I'm going to, suffer as much as I need to for as long as I need to, or however much longer I'm going to be alive, because this is my destiny. There isn't anything I could have done differently. He sort of feels like he has no other choice, even when he does have other choices. Like, one of the boot drops of the film is him keeping the fact that he has like several thousand,
120 grand.
yeah, just sitting there because he wants to give it to his daughter. And like, several of the characters like yell at him, and they're like, "Why the fuck don't you use any of the money on yourself?" And the reason is that he doesn't want to.
So like that's true, and that's actually something that I like. I don't mind the internal perspective of, he thinks he deserves the abuse, so he doesn't fight back against it. But like, the problem that I run into, and this has always been my problem with the movie, is without a dissenting voice, without a character who goes, "No, he doesn't deserve this abuse. Yes, he's overweight, but that doesn't make him less human or a problem or a monster." And the fact that everyone treats him like shit, I don't know, it kind of feels like the movie agrees that he's bad because he's fat, or he's fat because he's bad. Like, I don't know what it's complicated. It's confused to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, on the one hand, they are kind of trying to do this woe unto this poor soul, too good for this sinful earth. But on the other hand, look at the fat slob wallowing in his own filth.
Mm-hmm. It's really the audio playing mournful music when Liz goes to get him the fried chicken in the opening scene is just like, or like introducing him masturbating. It's just like, I don't know what the movie is thinks it's saying, and I think that goes back to Darren Aronofsky, who is a director who I've struggled with more and more as we've both gotten older.
Honestly, the person who I think treats him with the most respect is Mary.
Mm-hmm. But Mary's only in one scene.
Mary's only in one scene. She's still pretty awful to him, but she has clocked the vibe. She's like, "You have irreparably damaged your relationship with our daughter, but, like, I understand the plan, I accept the plan, and I'm going with it. And also, I'm tuned into the fact that Ellie's a fucking bitch.
Honestly, I think that, like, if he wanted to explore the theme of honesty, I think a way more interesting way to take his relationship with Ellie is, and this is one of those things, like, is this what happens whenever you run into a character named Sam on one of your pod episodes, Sam? Because it doesn't happen to me very often. Is like, I'm gonna make an insane comparison, and I want you to stick with me for a moment. So one of the things I like about Wicked, stick with me, is that, like, the reason Elphaba starts to like Glinda is Glinda doesn't get pissy at her because she's green. Glinda hates her personally. Glinda sees her like, what is this feeling? Glinda sees her for who she is and is like, fuck you. And like, that would be interesting if, like, the reason he wants to be around Ellie is because Ellie doesn't hate him because he's fat. Ellie hates him because of who he is and what he did to her. That would be something. It would be saying something about the way fat people are treated. I'm fat.
That's honesty.
Exactly. That would be real honesty. I'm fat, and that is like, if it weren't for the fact that I'm trans, it would be the first thing everyone notices about me. Now it's the second.
Well, that's the thing. She, in her awfulness, she does do that frequently. She even says outright, like, "I would still hate you even if you weren't like this disgusting fat person. It's just another thing I can lob at you because I'm finding any way to hurt you because I want to hurt you because that's how I interact with the world." Perhaps I'm biased because I do work with, high schoolers and people around, early 20s or whatever, but yeah, they're just kind of like that.
Yeah. No, see, the problem, I think, isn't on Ellie's side of the relationship, it's on Charlie's, because he doesn't know her. And all he ever really goes on about is how, you're amazing, you're amazing. You're an amazing person, you're the best thing I ever did in my life. Motherfucker, where?
Ellie is weird because she is a very authentically teenager. Even the essay that he keeps going over and over and over again, it is a very authentically teenager essay.
Who the fuck is making a 8th grader read Moby Dick?
I don't fucking know.
Whomst the fuck makes 8th graders read Moby Dick? Motherfucker, in 8th grade, we were barely getting through A Midsummer Night's Dream because we were too busy laughing at the fucking dick jokes. And that was following up To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, I didn't read Moby Dick until I was in college. So the reason she read Moby Dick is because they need another plausible reason for it to be called The Whale other than being a fat joke, is the long and short. And, like, Moby Dick is thematically related. It's also a story about obsession and self-destruction. But it, like, I don't know. Ahab isn't the main character of Moby Dick. Maybe Charlie shouldn't be the main character of this story. But I don't know. I keep trying to, like, bring up Darren Aronofsky and, like, talk about his filmography, and, like, we keep getting sidetracked because there's a lot to talk about in this movie. And, like, the thought that I had watching this is there's a director. People compare Darren Aronofsky to a lot of people. I know Videokind compared him to Zack Snyder. I actually compare him a lot to Lars von Trier.
Oh.
They're both directors who I feel like are challenging and interesting and complicated, who I end up defending a lot. And, like, so The Whale isn't quite at the level I got to with The House That Jack Built, which is Lars von Trier's last movie that I saw, where, like, the credits are rolling, I'm sitting there theater, and I'm just like, I was a fucking sucker to defend you, Lars. Everyone else was right. I was wrong. Fuck you, Lars. So I'm not quite there with Darren, but I'm getting there. I haven't liked something he's made in a while. Since Black Swan, really.
Yeah, after Black Swan, he started getting weirdly religious.
So, like, Black Swan, you brought it up, Justin, in relationship. Both of you brought it up in various ways in relationship to this movie, and, like, you're right that Black Swan is also about obsession. But what I like about Black Swan, and this is one of my favorite themes, is, like, the relationship between the creation of art and the annihilation of self, which is what Black Swan is really, and The Wrestler are really explicitly about. But, like, that gives it something specifically to be about, to give the character something to push for, to destroy themselves for. Charlie is destroying himself for a character that we never see, and for another character who is really exhausting to be on screen with. Ellie is an authentic teenager in that I don't want to interact with her anymore.
If I wanted to watch an authentic teenager, I would be watching Fantasy High junior year supercuts of Marianne Scuttle.
That sure was a bunch of words.
You need to get caught up on Dimension 20.
I've not watched a second of it.
Now that you mentioned Lars von Trier, I'm imagining, like, the most optimalist way to end this film is you basically do Melancholia. You just you you externalize the eating yourself to death by having a rogue planet hit the Earth.
Global annihilation. Considering this takes place in fucking 2016, that does kind of feel like a point of global annihilation. Like, goddamn, hearing about the Republican primary, and here we are in 2025, and that fucking man is back, and...
I literally have in my notes that, like, the Republican primary stuff, the political stuff, is brought off just often enough for me to be like, it has to mean fucking something, right? But for the life of me, I can't figure out what he's going for. Is it literally just to make sure we know it's set in 2016?
The closest I could come to thinking of it is that it is analogous to the self-destruction metaphor that's going on. Because, right now, there's a lot in my feed of Francesca Ramsey singing, "I never thought the leopards would eat my face."
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, so part of the problem with Ellie is, like, she has a reasonably sympathetic motivation. Having a parent walk out on you when you're very young fucking sucks. And, like, it took me a long time for me to stop being mad at my father. And my father didn't even, like, exit my life. He just stopped being married to my mom. And, okay, we moved 3,000 miles away, but that's beside the point. But part of the problem is that, like, I really sympathize with Charlie being gay in what was, I think, supposed to be 2008 in Idaho had to be really fucking hard.
Oh, for sure.
They establish that, like, Ellie's mom fought Charlie really hard for custody. You think the fact that he's gay didn't, like, prevent him from getting custody of you, Ellie?
Also, like, his boyfriend is escaped from a new fundamentalist Christian doomsday cult.
They also kind of hint that Ellie is gay briefly, which, I think that's about a good enough space to, like, bring up how Darren Aronofsky employs queerness, because, like, is it me? Like, okay, except for the daughter in The Wrestler, who was never confirmed to be gay, but, like, hinted at enough to be more or less explicit. Is it me, or does he only ever employ lesbianism as an example of how far you have fallen? Am I crazy?
I think he is attached to the very, very old idea of queerness as a deviation from expected / entrenched rules of quote unquote good society.
But I'm just thinking, like, Nina in Black Swan has sex with a woman when she's kind of, like, at her moment of maximum insanity.
The famous climax to Requiem for a Dream.
Precisely, that is her lowest point, literally and figuratively. If the implication that we're getting there is accurate, the worst character in this movie is a lesbian. Darren, I mean, like, we could even go to the rest of it, like the daughter, the way they tell us that the daughter will never be willing to engage with the main character in The Wrestler is, oh, well, she's gay, so she's never going to talk to him. Like, Darren, what are you trying to say here? Do you want to talk with someone about that? Like, I don't think you're a bad dude, but, like, maybe ask yourself why you keep doing that. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just overreading into a couple of brief moments where we, like, see her Facebook and people have posted the D slur on her comments.
Well, this is what gave her the pass to use the F slur earlier.
Teenagers, they'll throw it around for anything they think is dumb.
True.
Not usually that specific one, though. Not usually the D slur, which nowadays I just throw it at my friend as a compliment. I don't know. I don't know what to make of Darren Aronofsky. As I said, I'm not quite at the point where I'm like, I was a fucking sucker. But I didn't like Noah. I didn't like Mother. I didn't like this. I don't know what he's upcoming. Let me look.
He's definitely one of those directors who's very, very into himself. And honestly, if I were going to compare him to anybody, I'd probably compare him to Rian Johnson, because he has a similar energy of wanting you to know how smart he is.
His next movie, according to Wikipedia, is an A24 produced biopic of, and I want you both to get who the worst person, and get a name in your brain of who the worst person for that dude to cover is. Just get it in there. Think about it.
Dennis Rodman?
Elon Musk. He's doing an A24 biopic of Elon Musk.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
All right, I'm going to go walk into Long Island Sound. You two wrap up. Bye!
No, Ellie! Ellie!
I thought the next film was an adaptation of a book.
Wait. What about this caught stealing thing that's about a baseball player in the 90s getting involved with New York crime stuff?
Oh my gosh, I've not seen... Oh, I guess that's it's already in shooting. Okay, that might be something.
It will delay the Elon Musk one, huh?
It will delay the Elon Musk one.
I mean, maybe we'll see the Elon biopic get killed. I don't know. The Apprentice is this year, so...
The Apprentices are made it all the way out, so... And, like, I like some of the stuff that he makes. I like The Fountain. I like Black Swan. I liked Pi.
Yeah, I mean, he has also claimed that he wanted to do a courtroom drama of artificial intelligence, and that never happened, so...
I don't think Elon Musk is a dude we should be doing biopics about.
Absolutely not.
For starters, I have a lot of... The list of biopics that I actually like is shorter than you'd think. They usually kind of suck. And I think everyone is going to be too afraid of pissing off the wealthiest man on earth to do, like, The Social Network for him. Look how much this dude sucks. We'll talk about The Social Network. That is a movie I quite like.
Sorkin.
The Sorkin of it all aside. And you know what? Honestly, if I were to say Darren Aronofsky, but good, honestly, but more consistently good, I would say David Fincher's probably close, although his batting average has been getting worse lately too. Yeah, I don't know. I should go over my notes, see what else I had to talk about. Oh, I do have a note here, which is still one of my favorite things about the movie, which is, hey, it's the poster shot. Literally the only publicity still they had. Remember that? Anyone besides me pay enough attention to movie news to, like, know when they kept advertising the whale just on one shot of his face?
I do remember the one shot, because I think it also ended up being, like, his Oscar portrait thing in every awards show. That was the image they always showed.
Yeah, part of the problem is that Brendan Fraser and Hong Chow and even Sadie Sink are working extremely hard to make up for the material. I think Brendan Fraser is quite good, caveat the material, in this movie. I don't know what else I've seen Sadie Sink in. What else has she been in? I genuinely don't know. Oh, she was in the Fear Street movies. I like those movies. They're fine. All Too Well, the short film. What the hell is that?
That's Taylor Swift.
Oh, I have to edit that out before the Swifties come and gut me. If this is in here, please know that I am not reading this at gunpoint. The Taylor Swift is lovely and great. I really liked... That can't actually be the title of her latest album. Really? Okay. I'm not reading this at gunpoint, but I really loved The Tortured Poet Society.
Ellie, it's the Tortured Poets Department.
Damn it! I ruined the bit.
They have seen a picture that had the letter or the numbers 1989?
9.
Yes. 1989. That's how big of a fan they are.
I don't get that reference.
Is this your 13th episode, Ellie? Doesn't matter. Swifties, get over yourselves.
What? Listen. Not to be mean to the Swifties. I like some of her songs. I liked Antihero. I liked Blank Space. She's fine. That's it.
Just in general, about her, you need to calm down.
Hey, that's the name of one of her songs, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Ellie, for explaining the joke. You and Darren Aronofsky should do a comedy together.
I would love to see Darren Aronofsky do a comedy. Honestly, You said you compared him to Ryan Johnson, which is not a comparison that I think is fair, only because I actually like Ryan Johnson's movies. But the thing that I think, even though I think Ryan Johnson does have the problem where he thinks he's too smart for the room, which he does, a lot of directors have that problem, but in Ryan Johnson definitely does, is that Ryan Johnson is like funny, like he has a sense of humor, whereas I don't think Darren Aronofsky does. I'd struggle to think of any moments in really any of his movies, but especially this one, that are like funny.
Yeah, no.
I'm now thinking of like those screwball 80s 90s comedies, like what would Darren Aronofsky's Fletch look like? What would Darren Aronofsky's Who's Harry Crumb look like?
I would I would unironically watch the shit out of that. That might be the actual reason why it feels like the movie is so judgmental of Charlie. Aronofsky's style is so downbeat and depressing from the word go. I don't know, man. I'd want to die to get out too.
It's just. I think Darren Aronofsky might be allergic to joy. Because everything of every movie I've ever seen him get involved with, the characters are treating the situation like life and death, but the movie is also treating the situation like life and death, which is, in Black Swan, that's a thing where it works because Mila Kunis's character, Lily, is like, oh my god, it's not life and death, it's ballet, and Natalie Portman's over here like, no, I need to be perfect.
I think that like a degree of, if Darren Aronofsky has both a fatal flaw and a unique selling point in the same element, it would be that his movies are extraordinarily subjective. They are usually from a single character's perspective and almost never deviate from it. Like, I've been talking shit about how this movie is all in one apartment, but like that's just because he never leaves. Darren Aronofsky generally doesn't have point of view outside of its characters. It doesn't have a third person point of view, which is why I was a little bit kidding about Fincher there, because Fincher's whole style is not at all subjective, entirely objective. And that can lead to like really good stuff, like with Black Swan, where like there are multiple characters who are telling her like, hey buddy, calm down. You don't need to transform into a swan creature to dance ballet really well. It's fine. But in this case, I think that just sort of, it's a miserable movie about a guy who's miserable. And yeah, it makes me kind of miserable, but I don't feel like catharsis at the end when he dies, and like I think the visual is ascends to heaven. Someone smarter than me needs to do a podcast on Darren Aronofsky and religion.
I mean, I think it's Ascension to Heaven. It's the same thing he did at the end of Black Swan, is you get to that moment of perfection or honesty or whatever, and you're going into the white light and the movie is ending.
He does like to fade to white.
You're so smart, Darren. Good for you.
Yeah, I don't know. Justin, what about you? You have anything else you wanted to explore?
Let's see. So now that all the people left because of the Taylor Swift comments, I feel that I can. I feel now at the 11th hour, this is when I should do my dramatic twist of the film and reveal that I actually really like the film. This is my. I feel the need to steel man this film. As I was saying earlier, I have never seen a film that so accurately captures what it feels like and what it looks like and what it, the sort of repulsion that you would feel having this sort of eating disorder. Like, I'm not as big as Charlie, but I'm pretty close. Like, I can still walk on my own. I don't need assistance to walk or move around, but like, moving is difficult. Moving is exhausting. And I understand the interpretation of it like, oh, it's like fat phobic because it's trying to like play up the revulsion or the disgustingness of it, but there's like 300 pounds of difference between being 300 pounds and 600 pounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine being another 100 pounds more than I already am, like just how exhausting doing anything would be. Like, no wonder he can't leave his house. And every person in this film, except maybe the born again evangelical fucking non-denominational, whatever the hell he was, reminds me of a person in my life because as they repeat several times in the film, it made me think of my own life, right? That's that's the through line. And so, like, I have had a loved one commit suicide. I have had a loved one with the opposite side of the eating disorder spectrum than I have. Like, they felt the need to control their eating, and so they became anorexic. I have a friend who's dying, and they're just doing these self-destructive things, and I've tried to do what I can for him, but he keeps making terrible choices, and I try to tell him not to do those things, but you can't make people do good, or you can't make people make good choices, because if you could make them do the right thing, then there wouldn't be the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Liz's frustration with him, like, really spoke to me as well. Like, she needs to maintain this connection to Charlie because they are the only remnant that they have left of their brother. And even though seeing him do this to himself is agonizing, they also feel the need to almost enable his behavior because they can't say no to him, because they want to in some way maintain his comfort, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
even though they keep enabling his behavior, or at least don't make more of an effort. Like, several times in the film, they tell him to call the ambulance, or that they will call the ambulance for him. And they keep saying no, or he keeps saying no. And well, even if they call the ambulance, he would just deny service anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's just a lot of this film that is, I guess the film would want me to use the word honest, or at least there's a lot of this film that is accurate, or feels accurate to what I experience being a binge eater, well, I'm not bulimic, but like, I was looking at like reactions people had to the film, and they're like, oh, the eating scene where he was seen by the pizza delivery guy, and like he eats his feelings. It was like comical, or like they felt it was funny. It's like, no, it's fucking awful.
I didn't find it funny. I did find it like ugly in a really.
I found it
Yeah,
cruel.
because it is. It is, because you fucking do that shit to yourself. Like, like, I have eaten an entire pizza by myself. Like, there are times where I'm having a bad day at work and I go to the grocery store and I just like eat an entire fucking chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and like, you just do that shit, and like, you're looking at it like from the outside, and it's like, why the fuck are you doing that? And you don't know, because you're an addict. Like, and the ending, I don't get, like, I get it, what they're trying to go for, but like, speaking as someone who like found their father after he died, doing that to your daughter is like the worst fucking thing you could have done.
Mm-hmm.
That close to death, like, even if it is metaphorical, and like he did die on the fucking couch, and like it's all like, oh, he's ascending, he's being able, like, he's crossed over and accepted the guilt in his life, and thus conquered the whale at the cost of his own life. Even if that is like what they're going for, it's like, here is this teenage daughter who has like incredibly fucking complex daddy issues, and you're just letting her see you die, or like you like fucking like completely fucking spiraling like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the fact that he is, just how convoluted his own like internal processing is. It's like, you try to think about it and you're like, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, you must be like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, well, it makes perfect sense to him, but he doesn't make good choices. He doesn't think through things. He's very impulsive. He's very reactionary almost, and like, no wonder he keeps making all of these terrible choices. Yeah, I don't know. It's I admit to a severe level of bias in terms of like, again, I have never seen, you said a few times that like, I've seen or I see the TV glow like speaks to like your experience, or like, I more saw it as like a shitty hero thing, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have gender confusion. I don't have uh, trans issues or that sort of thing, but like, I
Mm-hmm.
do have eating disorder stuff. I do have the things that Charlie is going through, and yeah, it does speak to me, because that's what it feels like. That's what it looks like. That's how I speak to myself, right?
Justin, I'm not going to lie to you. I have never been happier to have you on an episode. I was really hoping I could pick up someone who really likes this film as to like talk about it with, because I want to know what people are getting out of this film. And, you know, I'm not, as I said, I'm overweight, but I'm nowhere near him.
Same.
I'm under 250 pounds at this point. So I get it. I do understand. I feel like if the film had gone more for what I feel like is the strongest moment in the film, which is Liz telling Charlie no one can save anyone, with the caveat, with the unspoken element being unless they want to be saved. You know, that feels like a reasonable point to make. You know, that all these people are trying to save Charlie, and he just doesn't want to be fucking saved. He wants to be damned. He wants people to tell him they're disgusting. I there's a lot of this movie that's kind of stagey. I mentioned the missionaries monologue. It feels very much like a remnant of, well, there are 5 actors in this play, you know, they all better get a monologue and a backstory, so at least 2 monologues each.
We're going for that featured actor Tony.
You're not, so that you don't, you know, no one's going to come out and do their community theater production of The Whale if they just come in and talk to Charlie for 3 scenes. No, he needs a monologue. But like, I get the logic train. I get where you're coming from, that it feels, to quote Charlie, honest.
I gotta say, this film made me think of my own life. That was one of my earlier notes. Like when he was like going through the Ahab thing early on, it just like like speaking about the whale, or speaking about, like, you know, metaphorically how the Moby Dick applies to the film. I'm like, you know, perhaps the whale is too subtle. You know, perhaps there are some people in the back who don't get it.
I have attended a 3.5 hour sung through musical version of Moby Dick that included audience participation on a simulated Nantucket sleigh ride and kneading spermaceti in the form of tapioca pudding.
What?
That is a much better use of your time if you want to do some Moby Dick shit. This is just painful.
Moby Dick, the 5D experience. Huh?
Labored, completely misunderstanding Moby Dick. Like, calling Captain Ahab a pirate. He's not a pirate. He's a fucking whaling captain on a Nantucket whaling ship.
Again, like, I feel like there's almost something there. Again, the movie isn't really interested in interrogating Ellie's behavior super much. Honestly, Ellie occasionally feels more like a plot device than a character.
Golly gee, Charlie, did you know Ellie sent this recording and photos of me to my youth group and they've forgiven me? Isn't it wonderful?
Which, again, like, I feel like if the point was no one can save anyone unless they want to be saved, that would be a good point. It just incredibly frustrates me that Charlie immediately contradicts it. That Ellie did in fact save Thomas. But, you know, you could do a lot. Like, there are moments where I can sort of see Ellie as a person who has a completely different perspective on the world than Charlie does, you know, and you could draw attention to that if you wanted with the pirate thing, because, like, if you're a teenager and you don't really understand historical context, I can see how Ahab would feel like a pirate. He's killing a whale. You're not allowed to do that now.
Yeah, it's just that Ellie has that whole I never forget anything thing, and I'm like, well, you sure as fuck forgot the book you were reading.
Yeah, again, there's lots of stuff in there that I wish, you know, I never forget anything is one of those things that I wish the movie would contradict. I wish the movie would more consciously say, no, Ellie is full of shit. I wish it would actually say that, you know, you can have all of your characters be liars and bullshitters. You know, we were talking about Rian Johnson a minute ago. Part of what makes the Knives Out movies fun to me is that all of those characters are lying to themselves about themselves. But you got to draw attention to it. You got to make that part of the movie, or else I feel like the movie agrees with them. I do really appreciate your point of view, though, Justin, because that does give me, you know, that does make me see the movie in comparison to my own life. It makes me think about my own life. God, I'm not. I don't. I didn't mean to trail that off into a joke. No, like I do think that that's a perspective that I hadn't considered. I don't know. It's interesting. It's a. I'm glad I found someone who liked the movie.
Or like even like the coping mechanisms, like the you see it parodied, or like you see it, it's almost a trope, right? It's just like locking the room that the person was using
Mm-hmm.
because you want to preserve them.
Yeah.
And like, or like in comparison to like how he is like completely inattentive with his own life, he wants to preserve this perfect memory of what he had for Alan,
Mm-hmm.
even when he feels like he has failed this person because he couldn't pull them out of their eating disorder or their fucked up like religious induced
Trauma.
trauma. I find the Thomas character, like, I was very concerned when Ellie started taking photos. I thought that was going to go in a worse direction than it went. I thought they were going to try to do like a like look at this, like I don't know, lack of a better word, look at this degenerate and what he's doing to this nice young man, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that like this guy like is using religion to pull himself out of like his drug addiction, even if it is just pot or whatever. It's like have you ever heard of like FAA?
No.
So, like, not unlike Alcoholics Anonymous, there are other subgroups that use the same framework, but for other addictions. So, like, you have Narcotics Anonymous, you have, and FAA is Food Addicts Anonymous,
Okay, makes
and
sense.
so it's people who use the framework of AA to try to deal with their food addiction, and it's the same philosophy. It's like you make terrible choices, you don't think well for yourself, you are going to surrender the choice to choose for yourself, and you're going to submit to a higher power who will choose for you, and he says no.
Mm-hmm.
And you will submit yourself to like the community, and if you do this you're betraying the community, and you're going to build these connections so you feel more awful breaking them than you do not eating or not hurting yourself in this way. And so like I'm like his interactions with this religious person made me think of FAA, where like I've never been a particularly spiritual person, but I could see Charlie trying to use this as a way to like save himself, but not buying it. Like, one of the recurring, it's almost a joke of the film. Like every single character in this movie takes like a 5 minutes to like shit on Thomas for being an evangelical.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single person hates him for like
Honestly, as they should.
Mood.
and just the fact that everyone has like, hey, well, that's Idaho for you, I guess. But yeah, just like yeah, even that element of it, like trying to use faith to work your way through a thing, but then sort of backing out of it, or like the scene directly before him hurting himself by binge eating. The thing he did wrong is revealing himself to the pizza delivery guy.
Yeah.
And like even like a small mistake like that, where he like you felt he botched the interaction because he felt he was almost beginning to have a connection to this new person, and because of what he's become he feels like he's ruined it. I could absolutely see like that being a triggering event for a person like Charlie, and like it's like or the recurring thing with him not wanting to use his camera because he doesn't like what he looks like. It's like just the intense body dysmorphia of what he is. Like people bring up the fat suit being like disgusting, or like it's like overly grotesque, but it's not completely inaccurate to what that level of obesity looks like, in addition to the fact that that's probably what Charlie feels for himself.
Mm-hmm.
He is that revulsed by his appearance, he is that disgusted with how he does things, and should he feel this way about himself? No, but
He does.
it's how he's he does feel this way about himself, and he shouldn't feel this way about himself, because there's nothing inherently wrong with you know, eating, or like there's nothing inherently wrong with being obese, but it's like this is how he's, as you're saying, flagellating himself, doing this self-harm.
That's what I mean when I say that it's a pretty uniquely bad connection of director and material, because like yes, that is obviously how Charlie feels, which means it's the director's job to not reinforce that, and I don't think Aronofsky is the guy to do that. I will say, we were talking about incredibly on the nose metaphors earlier. I do like the recurring motif of him keeping Alan's the bedroom he shared with Alan, like pristine, while the rest of his apartment is in squalor. But like the bit where, oh, now he's in the wheelchair, so he can't fit into the doorway to the bedroom where he shared with Alan. Darren Aronofsky knows writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
Alan's just another prop, honestly. Like, Alan's a man in a refrigerator. We just didn't see the fridge stuffing.
I mean, Alan, I don't mind movies which are about grieving without the character who is being grieved being present. You know, two of my favorite movies of the last 10 years are Pig and Drive My Car, which are both about characters enduring grief so intense that like they genuinely act like it's going to kill them. Like you believe that Nicolas Cage in Pig is going to be killed by the grief he's feeling. But like what I like about those movies and what I feel like they did, which and I'm not a person who has been without grief in my life. I lost my mom when I was 23. What I like about those movies and a lot of other movies about grief that I like is they both end on a note of like maybe it's not going to be okay immediately, but there is an after. There is a place where you can start to be a person again. And that would be my ultimate complaint about The Whale. Its solution to Charlie's grief is for Charlie to not be there anymore.
It's a protruded bury your gaze sequence.
And then Charlie falls over on Ellie and crushes her.
Oh, God. Justin, I understand completely what you get out of this, and I respect that you like it for that reasons. But for me, this was a movie that was miserable about watching people be miserable, and so therefore I must also be miserable. And so, from 6 Degrees of Star Wars, I have no idea what to give this movie as a connection, but Force is not with it.
You know, I don't mind movies about miserable people being miserable. I just feel like I have to get something out of it. And I agree with Sam. The Force is not with it in my case. I just feel like I didn't get enough out of it to counteract how miserable I was.
To use the stock phrase, I love how much this sucks.
Boy.
It's one of those things. So like, I don't mind when films are like overly sad. It's almost to the point where like the fact that it does occasionally try to do things that are like somewhat saccharine or somewhat, it's like look at how noble Charlie is, or look at how he's always looking in the positive side of things, or like trying to like show the I don't know, the humanity, if you want to use that phrasing, of like this person. It's like, oh, he's able to like read into like the world's shittiest haiku and like see the benefit of a person not actually like engaging with the material, because he always wants to see the good side of things, right? Or like or at least that's what he wants to believe for himself. There are problems with the film. I don't disagree with like the major complaints people have with the film necessarily. I do have like disagreements with like, I don't feel that the film is like inherently fat phobic, because I just have a different perspective of like, there's a almost entire person's worth of difference between being 300 pounds and being 600 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So just like the scale of the obesity that they're demonstrating is a different level than a person. It's like, oh, I've been like 275 for X number of years. And like, sure, a doctor's going to give you a hard time about that shit. But if you feel healthy, or you are like living your life and it isn't impeding your life, then it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a problem for Charlie, because it is impeding his life. He can't leave his fucking house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here's some frankly lore, I guess. I used to be a pizza delivery boy too. And there was a time where I did deliver to a person who was not dissimilar to Charlie, and he had me go around and do some like small errands for him, like when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't feel like saying no to this guy. And like, let's see, this would have been like 2015. So like, I was probably 350 back then. And Like he like took me aside and like he tried to like almost give me like the talk, but for being like obese.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very odd conversation. It was a very odd couple of minutes of my life. And I don't usually think about it, but like seeing him interacting with this fucking pizza delivery boy again made me think of my own life and the fact that this did happen. And the fact that a couple of months later, because I had a friend who lived nearby, when I drove by the guy's house, there was an ambulance outside and they're carrying a person away in a stretcher. Was it him? I don't know. It was a duplex. There was a bunch of people in that building it could have been, but it's not unlikely.
Feel good movie of the century.
Like, I don't know. It's like there's a lot of old people. There's a lot of fat people. There's not a lot of old fat people, right?
What I should be saying is thank you for your vulnerability and
Mm-hmm.
thank you for sharing. I just...
Absolutely.
Oh, this is heavy.
I admit that there's a severe level of bias. Again, I don't really see this issue represented in film very often,
Mm-hmm.
so I like it for that regard. There are individual things that I dislike, like obviously his daughter's a bitch. Obviously, the weird subplot with the religious fanatic is odd. His realization, it's like you didn't. I wasn't here to save you. You saved me.
Mm.
This thing was weird. Ellie trying to blackmail this guy and it like going well on accident, and him like spinning this into a good thing is odd. But I don't know. There's just a lot of like things that spoke to me, or at least reminded me of things that have happened in my own life.
Mm.
Seeing how he interacted with Mary, seeing how he interacted with Liz, and how these people do care for him, but they just know that he's self-destructing and they can't make that stop. And them sort of processing the grief that they have for this person, that they continue to do this to themselves. And one of the issues with food addiction is the fact that, like, an alcoholic can stop drinking, a narcotics person could stop taking pills or whatever drug they're doing. You got to eat,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like every time you eat, you want more. And it's not that you're hungry, you just want more. And you think to yourself, I shouldn't be eating this much. And then you keep eating because you want more. And like the fact that they're enabling that, like, bringing him over the fucking room temperature chicken they had on the fucking counter, or like the bariatric, even the bariatric Heimlich shit. Like, I haven't had a choking experience like that, but I was an EMT for a bit, and I remember like people doing that for me, or practicing for me, basically, because I was like the biggest guy they had there. So like when they were doing like the drills, they were just I was a convenient prop, let's say.
Mm. I don't think that you're, as I was being 100% sincere when I said that I'm glad I found someone who liked this film to talk about, because I do really value alternate opinions. And like, yeah, maybe it's you like it for personal reasons, but if you look at my top 20 films of the 2020s so far, you know what you're going to find all over there? Mom issues. My like third or fourth is Petite Maman. I have a thing about moms because I lost my mom when I was 23. It's art speaks to you through your personal experiences, and this one, I'm really glad to say, I think I'm glad that it spoke to you. I'm glad that you got something out of it. I'm, even if I didn't personally get that.
Yeah, it's awful what happened to your mom. I lost my dad about 3 days after I turned 23 too.
Yeah, so you get it. You do get it. Yeah. And on that incredibly cheerful note, Sam, do you have anything you want to plug?
As mentioned, I am the host of 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. You can check it out wherever pods are cast, and my social media is Demisem. I'm basically everywhere except Twitter now, because, as we already established, fuck you, Elon Musk.
Fuck you, Elon Musk. Justin, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Let's see. One moment.
If nothing else, you can plug our Pygmalion production, because I think we've got everyone in these podcasts in there.
Yes. I am also the director of Worlds Elsewhere's production of George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, which is going up on February 1st. Visit worlds-elsewhere.com for more details.
I am streaming it. God knows why.
I'm going to go with my plug for this week is the adapter cable for a laptop battery that he throws across the room.
God love you, Justin. He throws that laptop pretty hard. Like that, those things are sturdier.
Oh yeah, that was like yeah, again, this was like 2016. I guess 2016 wasn't that long ago, but yeah, that was like
That probably wasn't a new laptop either.
oh no, that looked like yeah, that looked like a 2000s one. It just it didn't even have an integrated webcam. Look at that.
As always, you can find me, Ellie, on Tumblr at Football in Tuxedos with dashes between the words. You can find me on Blue Sky, Medium, and Letterboxd at LSR42. And you can find this podcast on Blue Sky at Biggest Night Pod. We are available on both Spotify and YouTube. And if you follow us on YouTube, be sure to give us a subscribe, maybe like and comment on the videos so that you can tell me which parts you like and which parts you don't. And that's it for our episode on The Whale. Thanks to both Justin and Sam for coming out. But I think that episode was, if you'll forgive the terrible pun, kind of heavy.
Boo.
Sorry, Sam, I had to. So I think for next, we will be returning to randomly determined episodes next time. And you know what? For next time, we're going to go with something considerably more cheerful. We are going to be talking about the 2011 film The Muppets. Hope to see you there.
Muppets!
Now for something completely different.